Welcome to The Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz. This episode is going to be much different from the episodes that I normally do. As you can see, I'm not interviewing anybody. I don't have the Rational Egoist background behind me. It's not going to be about philosophy, psychology, politics, or ideas or anything. It is going to be about love, pain, and hope. It's an episode, to be quite honest, I really don't have the energy to do, but I'm going to will myself through it because I have an ulterior motive for doing this episode that I will reveal at the end. And I just hope that you'll stay through till the end, listen to this story, and then my ulterior motive hopefully will be accomplished. The story of love I want to tell begins in 1997. I was 20 years old at the time. I was not a very nice person. I was angry. I was violent. I could be downright mean. And I went on a double date with a friend of mine, and we each, had a girlfriend named Melissa, and they were friends. When he introduced me to his girlfriend, her last name was Palmieri. Now, this struck me as odd because I knew Palmieri's. My parents were friends with Palmieri's. And it turns out she was a cousin that I never knew about. It shocked me because I was aware of two brothers and a sister, but evidently there was a third brother that was Melissa's father. So we went out one night and I did something nice for her, and it always stuck with her. It didn't seem very much to me, but to her, who didn't have a lot of people doing nice things for her, it mattered. A couple months later, I was in prison where I would be for the next 25 years. In 2005, Melissa wrote to me, very nice letter, and we exchanged some letters back and forth, but then, life got in the way. I was still years from release, and she had her own stuff to do. Then in 2022, late April, I received a letter from Melissa, and it was very long and it was very nice. And she thanked me for that nice thing I did for her all those years ago. I didn't even remember what she was talking about, but she told me. And she said I could call her and that she'd be there for me whenever I needed her. And a few days later, I called her and we hit it off right off the bat. I mean, the conversations just flowed. It was so easy to talk with her. She was just so genuine. And we discovered that, we had a lot of differences in how we thought about the world and how we thought about life, but we had a lot in common as well. For instance, we had the same love languages. We both desired to be better people. We both were working on overcoming insecurities. We both even liked professional wrestling. And we both were committed to honesty and to sincerity. So we began talking on the phone on a regular basis and still writing back and forth. And within 2 weeks, I was in love. I knew it. There wasn't a doubt in my mind. And my view of love was that it takes time. You have to really get to know a person. You have to spend time with a person. It is just impossible to fall in love under these circumstances where one person is in prison, the other person's home, and you're only talking on the phone and writing letters. But I didn't care that it was different. I knew I loved her. And I called her up and I said to her, Melissa, I need you to not say anything. I'm going to tell you something and I don't want you to respond because I didn't really care. I just wanted to get it off of my chest. And I told her I loved her. And her answer was, I love you incredibly. And that became something that we would say to each other quite often. So we continued, talking and writing letters. And she told me about her little boy, a 3-year-old autistic boy named Vincenzo or Vinny or Vin. And she had many cute little nicknames for him, Monkey and Boogie Shoes. And along with all the other things that led me to love her, the fierceness with which she loved that boy and her willingness to go to any lengths to protect him and to make sure he was happy and to give him a good life just drew me to her even more strongly. Now, as I said, she had insecurity. So she was very insecure about visiting me. She was afraid that I wouldn't think she was pretty. Um, she was so wrong, but because she ultimately faced that insecurity, because that's what she did. She was willing to face things that made her uncomfortable and move forward. And she came to see me and she was so pretty and so full of life. And I kept falling harder and harder in love with her. And I decided to fight to get out of prison early. I had resigned myself to do the rest of my sentence, and, which would have been at that point, I think, about a year and a half to parole. But I decided to fight it because I just wanted to be with her so badly. And I ultimately got out of prison and we began, our life together. I was living with my close friend, and she was living with her friend, and we would mostly spend the weekends together. She had a kid to take care of, and I had a life to start putting together. But we still made time for each other sometimes during the week, and I got to know that beautiful, beautiful boy of hers, and I fell in love with him as quickly as I fell in love with her. I mean, he was just amazing, and so empathic and so sweet and so kind. And the way he would say Michael and he would hug me and just he was so playful and it just was amazing to me. And we would take him to the park and we took him to the science center and we took him to a dinosaur museum and Chuck E. Cheese, and he loved all that stuff and I loved it because now I began to have a family for the first time in my life. And so, we continued in this vein. My goal in life was to be a podcaster. Her goal in life was to be a chef. So she signed up for cooking classes and she dove right in. And a lot of times her old insecurities would come up and she would tell me, I can't do this. I can't do it. And I would tell her, Melissa, you've done it every time and you can do it every time. And every time she did it and she got straight A's and she was so proud of herself and she worked so hard at that. She had a dream. And then she had an issue with her teeth. I don't know exactly what it was, but she needed to have her original teeth removed and she needed to get dentures. And as insecure and as shy and scared as she was, she got those dentures and she took a picture, smiled brightly, and posted it to Facebook. This is my new smile. And it was beautiful. She was beautiful. And it absolutely just made me fall deeper and deeper in love with her. And, eventually it got to the point where her friend and roommate was going to sell her house. And Melissa needed to, find a source of income. She was raising a child. She couldn't work. How was she going to afford another place? So we decided that I would move in over there and she would get a job full time and I would take care of Vinny. That way I could continue to do my podcasting and we could save money for an apartment. And she worked so hard at this full-time job she got, dove right in. And I remember we didn't have a car at the time, so she would have to walk to the bus stop. And I just remember taking Vinny and saying, let's go meet mommy. And we would walk and we would meet her. And it was great. It was a great feeling to be able to contribute, to take care of him. And she was contributing by working. And I got to spend time with this just amazing child who loved my podcast. Whenever I would finish, he would say, Vincenzo, rational egoist. And he would love to come and sit here at the microphone and put the headphones on and say, welcome to the rational egoist. I've got, a bunch of videos of him doing so, and it's adorable. And he says, I love you, mommy. He loved his mother so much. When she would leave the room, he would be worried. Where's mommy? Where's mommy? He would run out of the room. Where is she? Follow her around. So cute and so helpful, and sometimes helpful to the point of aggravation when she's trying to do something and he wants to help and she's trying to cook and he's in the way, but it was still cute. So we moved in together and we ultimately moved into our new apartment, which is where I am now. And that was December 28th. December 24th, we had a beautiful, well, let me back up a little bit. On Halloween, Vinny's dad, he's protective of his son. So he wanted to get to know me. I'm taking care of his child. It was understandable. So we went out for Halloween, the four of us, and it was just a really nice experience for me. I tried to stay in the background a little bit because I wanted them to have Halloween with their son. I knew his dad wanted to get to know me, but I still didn't want to, hog that moment. But it was beautiful. And then Melissa and I, a friend of mine, my best friend Brent McCall, his son gave us a turkey for Thanksgiving. So we had our first Thanksgiving together. Christmas Eve, my cousin invited us to her house, and we went over there, and it was just a beautiful thing. It was my first Christmas with my cousins in over 30 years, and I got to share Melissa with them and them with Melissa. And I have pictures of her just smiling so brightly, so brightly. God, she was amazing. And we ended up moving into the new apartment on December 25th was Christmas, and Vinny's dad slept over so that we could all have Christmas with Vinny, and it was a beautiful, beautiful Christmas. We had a little fake white tree that Vinny loved and we loved, and it was beautiful, and it was a very nice time, and I was so happy because Melissa was so worried that she wouldn't be able to give him his Christmas. But she pulled it off like she always did. When she wanted to get something done, she got it done. And then we moved out here into far away from home, and she had an hour commute now to work and an hour back, and her little 93-pound body was exhausted, but she did it. And she said one time, I have to take care of my family. And the fact that she called us a family, it was so beautiful to me, and I was so excited and so happy, and I just hugged her so tightly. Hugging Melissa, and just, I could be in a room with Melissa. We didn't have to speak, and I just felt so comfortable. And the word I often use is safe. She made me feel so safe. I trusted her implicitly. I've never doubted a thing she said. I never thought she would deceive me or lie to me or do anything to hurt me. And I was right. She just loved so deeply and so strongly. And I loved her in turn. And sometime in January, Vinny got sick, I got sick, and Melissa got sick. And Melissa was sicker. She was coughing worse. And one day we had a blizzard out here, and I knew I would have to shovel more than once. It wasn't going to be a one-time thing. If I waited to the end, it would have been too much. So I went out. It was six or 6:30 in the morning. I shoveled the snow, and then I came back in, and I wanted to go back to bed. And I laid down and I figured I'd get up and go back out and shovel. And I woke up to this scraping, and I look out the window, and my, 93, 94-pound girlfriend who's sick is out there shoveling. And I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Get in the house. I'll take care of it. But she just always wanted to be working, to contributing, to doing something productive. And while it drove me nuts, it also drove me to love her because she just was so tenacious. And I kept telling her that cough is bad. You've got to go to the doctor. You got to go to the doctor. And she absolutely hated doctors. So she didn't really want to go. But eventually she said, okay, I'll go. So we took her to a clinic, and she tested positive for COVID. So we said, okay, COVID, probably we all have it. You just have a worse case, and we'll go home and we'll sit on the couch together, eat, watch television, enjoy each other's company. She tested negative for COVID, and she tried to go back to work, but she really couldn't. Once she had to leave because she couldn't do it. And another time they just sent her back. They said, you look too sick. You can't be here. The customers can't see you looking that way. But she tried. She wanted to go to work. And so she came back, and she still wasn't getting better. And I told her, you call the clinic, Melissa. So she called the clinic, and they said, well, sometimes COVID symptoms linger, but they still weren't going away. And I kept nagging her to go to the emergency room. And finally she agreed. So we went there, Melissa, Vinny, and I, and We thought, okay, well, at least I thought it's going to be probably she has a lung infection of some sort, bronchitis, maybe pneumonia. They'll give her an antibiotic and, we'll get on with our lives. And they took an x-ray and they said, your lung is filled with water. We need to do a CAT scan. So they did a CAT scan. No, they did I can't remember the order. It doesn't really matter. But they said that her lung had to be drained so that they could get a better picture of it. So, okay, she had to spend the night in the hospital. They inserted a tube into her and they drained her lung. And I remember being there the next day. Vinny and I went. We stopped. We got her a nice card and a nice teddy bear. And Vinny picked it out. And I said, Vinny, pick out a teddy bear for mommy. And he said, that one. And she absolutely loved it. And the doctor says, you've got a mass on your lung. And I knew what he meant right away. And I said, you mean a tumor? And he said, yes. And I said, and you're thinking, he said, cancer. Yes. And I knew right then how devastating this was. It just hit me so hard. I started crying. And every time I would cry, if Vincenzo was there, she would tell me to stop crying. I don't want my son seeing that. And it was so hard for me. And how she held it together in front of him is just more testament to a mother's love for her child, And a couple days later, they had done their test. They did an MRI, and they sent her home. They said, "There's nothing more we can do for you right now, but we'll set up some doctor's appointments for you." And they did, and it turned out she had the stage 4 lung cancer. It had already metastasized to her brain, and it turns out even worse. And she was going to stay home and go to her appointments. And let me tell you, while she was home after getting diagnosed with cancer, knowing she had a rest, she was a monumental pain in the ass because she didn't like being taken care of. She wanted to do everything for herself. She insisted on cooking. She insisted on rearranging stuff. She insisted that I continue to do my podcast and my social media posts. She said, we're not going to let this get in the way of, what we want to do. So I kept doing it as difficult as it was. And I thought that she was ultimately, correct. So one day I went to pick up Vinny. Vinny was with his dad. He spent the weekends with his dad, and I picked him up and I brought him home and put him to bed. And I came out, and Melissa told me that she had no feeling in her right leg. And I said, that's not good. We've got to call an ambulance. She said, no, I'm not calling an ambulance. I'm fine. It'll be fine. And I'm looking up the symptoms for stroke because that's what it seemed like to me. I'm saying, Melissa, I think this is a stroke. And she said, no, I don't want to go spend the night in the hospital. I'm okay. And it was because I believe Vinny, she was gone the weekend and she wanted to be, with her beautiful boy. And I'm a big believer in freedom of choice and people get to do what they want with their own lives. And so I wasn't going to force an ambulance on her. I wasn't going to call it. And I told her, you just let me know, if things get worse. An hour or so later, she said, Michael or honey, I need to go to the hospital. So I sent her to the hospital, and it turned out that she had multiple strokes. They were small strokes, but they were strokes nonetheless. So now she was admitted to the hospital, and she had to undergo MRIs and bone biopsies, stuff that was just excruciating, painful, but she wanted to get better for her little boy. So she did it all the treatments, all the blood draws, black and blue, all up and down her arms, no movement, in her leg. But one of the most beautiful moments I've ever experienced in my life was she had no control over her right arm. It would flail about and, but it would scratch her head. And I took her hand and I held it and I put it on my cheek, and unconsciously or subconsciously, she caressed my cheek with no conscious intent. She just caressed my cheek and I felt so loved. So she was in a not very good hospital and she was awaiting, she had to undergo a laser brain surgery to eliminate the tumors in her brain. And then she was going to be able to do chemo. But she wasn't at the hospital where they were going to do the surgery, and just a lot of bureaucratic bullshit where they postponed her surgery and they didn't have a bed available at Yale New Haven Hospital. So what we ultimately did was we signed her out against doctor's orders, and we took her to Yale because if you take somebody to the emergency room, they get a bed more quickly. And the doctors at Yale, were really good. The nurses, they were all so kind to her and to Vinny, her little boy who I was taking care of. And every day I would bring him to see mommy, and it was nice. And there's a couple stories here that I find amazing, just to a testament of who she was. She asked me, "Is it too much for you to take care of Vinny?" And I said, "No, not at all." I said, "The only thing that, does bother me a little is I don't get to spend as much time with you." And she hung up on me. She and basically what she was telling me is that's not important. Vinny is what is important right now. And she was willing to fight for that kid. And she underwent brutal this surgery where they screwed this thing into her head to hold her still. And she did it. And then she started chemo. But she had a problem with her blood. Her platelets were low. She needed a blood thinner to stop the strokes, but they couldn't give her the blood thinner because of the platelets. So this it went back and forth doing this, and she had to give blood so much, and they couldn't. It was so hard for them to find a vein, so they kept having to poke her and poke her and poke her with these things. But she did it all, man. She did it all, and she was doing her physical therapy. And on a Tuesday, um, I brought Vinny to see her. And she told me that she had been able to, with her walker, walk the length of the hall. The doctors thought she would never walk again. And the nurse said to her, like, wow, how can you do this? She said, a mother doesn't get days off. She just was fighting fiercely, fiercely for that little boy. And when we were visiting her, she looked over at him and she started to cry. And my instinct when I saw my baby crying was to rush to her and hug her. And when I ran toward her, she put her hand out and said, "No, I need to be able to do this for my son." And like I said, I respect people's wishes, so I respected that. But I was so happy because she had been able to walk now, and it was just things were looking up, I thought. And then the next morning, I called and she didn't answer, and I texted her and she didn't answer. And then her mother told me she had had a stroke the night before and they had to remove a clot. And that it took away her ability to speak. But when they took her to surgery, she gave him the thumbs up. She wanted it. She wanted to get better for her boy. And then I guess she looked really bad, and her best friend, who took such good care of her during all this time, was there for her, and her mom was there for her. And she told me you might not want to go see her like this because she had a breathing tube in, and she couldn't talk. Her eyes were closed. She could open them, but we went. I went anyway because I thought maybe she can hear me. And she could because I told her, squeeze my hand if you know it's me. And she squeezed my hand and she pulled it toward her. And then I asked her, give me a hug. And she did. And then she violently pushed me. And knowing Melissa, I'm pretty sure what she was doing was telling me to leave, telling me to go. She didn't want me to see her like that. And then the next day I saw her again and they were doing physical therapy with her and she was responding, man. She was using her feet and she was kicking. She couldn't talk, couldn't really open her eyes, but she was squeezing their hands and pulling their hands. And I thought it looked good, but then Bailey called me and said, Michael, she's not coming back. She's not getting better. They can't even give her the chemo to treat the cancer because it will kill her. She's fighting for a week or two. It's over. And I agreed, she was right. And Melissa delegated that decision making to her, and I respected Melissa's, right to do it anyway. So we did it. And the next morning I wanted to go and I wanted to spend all the time I could with her until she passed. And I got there and it was 10 o'clock in the morning and I went and I sat down. Nobody was there. At least I didn't think so. Turns out Bailey had been there since 3 o'clock in the morning. and all the tubes were removed. And I kissed her and I told her how much I loved her. And I told her that I would always have Vinny's back and always make sure that Vinny was okay. And then a friend came in and she told me, "You're not supposed to be here. Melissa did not want you to see her like this." So I left. Part of me it kills that I couldn't be with her at the end, but I understand why she didn't want me, didn't want me there, you know. And 3 o'clock in the morning, I got the call that my baby was dead. And let me just tell you, I love her more than I could ever imagine loving another human being, and I wouldn't trade a second of it for anything. She taught me how to love her. She taught me how to love her little boy. She taught me so much about life that I didn't know because I had spent 25 years in a cage. And she's gone. And every day, it's only been a couple days now, and every day I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to get up. I don't know how to move. I don't know how to do anything. And it's like I don't even want to. I don't want to get over it. I feel logically, I know it's not true, but I still feel like it's disrespectful to her if I live my life. She would never have wanted that, so I have to overcome it somehow. And I will. I will do it for her. I'll do it for me, and I'll do it for Vinny. Which brings me ultimately to the point of why I decided to do this episode. Melissa had a wish when she passed that her friend set up a GoFundMe page for Vinny's future. Vinny, lives with his dad, and his dad loves him so much, and his dad works very hard to take care of him, but he's ultimately not wealthy, and Vinny's autistic, and he needs special care. He needs help, and anybody who watches this or listens to it, the GoFundMe link will be attached. Please donate for that little boy. Even if you could only give $1, 50 cents, whatever, just give. They've got a goal of $10,000, but I want it to be much more. I want that little boy to have all the advantages that he could possibly have in life because he is the sweetest little boy I've ever seen. And I really don't have much else to say. I do have this that I found in all the all the letters and all the cards that I wrote and I sent to my baby throughout the years. She kept. I love you, Melissa, that I always will. Please donate to little Vinny. Okay? Thank you.